There comes a moment in the life of many chosen people when they begin to realize that the distance growing between them and those around them is not caused by pride, arrogance, or a desire to feel superior. It is caused by growth. It is caused by the quiet transformation that happens when pain teaches lessons that comfort never could. It is caused by the deep changes that take place within a person who has walked through storms that others never even knew existed. If you have found yourself feeling increasingly disconnected from people you once felt close to, there is a good chance that this message will feel deeply familiar. You may have noticed that conversations no longer reach the places they once did. The things that excite others no longer excite you in the same way. The priorities that seem to consume everyone around you no longer hold the same power over your heart. At times, this realization can feel painful because you remember the bond that once existed. You remember laughing together, dreaming together, and believing that certain relationships would last forever. Yet something changed. Life began shaping you differently. The seasons you survived forced you to develop a level of wisdom that could not have been learned through ordinary experiences. The losses taught you discernment. The disappointments taught you patience. The betrayals taught you caution. The loneliness taught you self-awareness. The waiting taught you endurance. Little by little, the person you became started seeing life through a different lens. One of the most difficult parts of being chosen is realizing that growth often creates separation before it creates connection. Many people assume that personal growth automatically leads to more relationships, more understanding, and more acceptance. Sometimes the opposite happens first. Sometimes growth reveals how many relationships were built on old versions of yourself that no longer exist. Sometimes people were connected to your wounds, your insecurity, your need for approval, or your willingness to shrink yourself to make others comfortable. When those things begin to heal, the entire dynamic changes. The chosen often discover that as they become stronger, healthier, and more aligned with their purpose, some relationships naturally begin to fade. This can feel confusing because you are not trying to leave anyone behind. You are simply becoming who you were meant to be. Yet not everyone is prepared to walk beside the version of you that emerged from the fire. Some people were comfortable with the version of you that doubted yourself. Some were comfortable with the version that constantly sacrificed your own needs. Some were comfortable with the version that never challenged the limits they placed upon you. Growth changes all of that. Suddenly, you begin setting boundaries. You begin valuing your peace. You begin protecting your energy. You begin recognizing your worth. The people who benefited from your lack of boundaries often struggle to understand the new version of you. This does not mean they are evil. It simply means that your growth requires adjustments that not everyone is willing to make. One reason chosen people often outgrow those around them is because they spend years developing strength in places nobody can see. The world tends to celebrate visible success, but the chosen frequently experience invisible victories long before anything changes externally. Some of your greatest victories happened in silence when nobody was watching. You carried burdens that few people ever noticed. You fought emotional battles that left you exhausted. You learned how to keep moving forward when every part of you wanted to give up. You learned how to trust God during seasons when nothing made sense. Those experiences changed you at the deepest level. They created resilience. They created maturity. They created perspective. When you have survived enough hardship, many of the things that consume other people simply lose their importance. Drama becomes exhausting. Competition becomes meaningless. Constant negativity becomes difficult to tolerate. Gossip becomes uninteresting. Superficial conversations begin to feel empty. It is not because you think you are better than anyone else. It is because suffering taught you what truly matters. Another painful reality is that growth often exposes differences that were always present but previously hidden. During certain stages of life, shared circumstances can create the illusion of deep compatibility. People attend the same schools, work the same jobs, live in the same communities, and face similar situations. These common experiences create connection, but as life progresses, deeper values begin to emerge. Character begins to matter more than convenience. Purpose begins to matter more than familiarity. Vision begins to matter more than comfort. This is when many chosen people start realizing that they are walking in a different direction. The path God placed before them requires a different mindset. It requires different priorities. It requires different habits. It requires a deeper commitment to growth. Not everyone is willing to make that journey. The chosen often carry a unique burden because they genuinely love people. They do not want to leave anyone behind. They want everyone to grow together. They want everyone to heal together. They want everyone to rise together. Yet life does not always unfold that way. Sometimes the most painful lessons involve accepting that you cannot force another person to evolve. You cannot force someone to seek healing. You cannot force someone to embrace responsibility. You cannot force someone to pursue growth. Every individual must choose that path for themselves. This realization can bring grief because it feels like watching potential go unused. It feels like watching relationships remain stuck while your soul continues moving forward. The chosen often spend years trying to save relationships that have already reached their natural conclusion. They stay longer than necessary because they see the good in people. They give more chances than most. They extend more grace than most. They continue hoping that things will change. Yet eventually there comes a moment when they understand that loyalty does not require self-abandonment. Caring about someone does not require sacrificing your own future. Loving someone does not require remaining in a place where your growth is constantly being diminished. One of the most misunderstood aspects of outgrowing people is the loneliness that often accompanies it. Many assume that growth feels empowering every day. In reality, growth frequently feels isolating. There are moments when you look around and realize that very few people truly understand what you have become or where you are headed. There are moments when you miss the simplicity of old relationships, even though you know you cannot return to the person you once were. There are moments when you wonder whether all the sacrifices were worth it. During those moments, it is important to remember that growth is not punishment. Separation is not abandonment. The distance you feel today may be creating room for the connections you need tomorrow. God often removes familiar surroundings before introducing new ones. He often creates space before he fills it. He often allows temporary loneliness to prepare you for deeper belonging. The chosen frequently mistake this season as evidence that something is wrong with them. In reality, it may be evidence that something is changing within them. The fact that you no longer fit into certain environments does not mean you failed. It may mean you have outgrown them. The fact that certain conversations leave you feeling empty does not mean you are disconnected. It may mean your soul is seeking greater depth. The fact that some relationships no longer feel aligned does not mean you are unlovable. It may mean you are being guided toward people who can meet you where you are becoming rather than where you once were. Your kindness cost you more than most people will ever understand. Your patience carried you through seasons that could have broken many others. Your endurance kept you moving when there seemed to be no reason to continue. The fact that you are still standing says more about your strength than you realize. Not every battle you fought was in vain. Every difficult season contributed something valuable to your growth. Every disappointment refined your character. Every setback strengthened your resilience. Every lonely night deepened your understanding. Every unanswered question increased your faith. God saw the tears that nobody else noticed. He saw the moments when you felt invisible. He saw the sacrifices that went unrecognized. He saw the times when you chose integrity even when it cost you. Those moments were not wasted. They were shaping who you were becoming. The chosen often carry a quiet strength that develops precisely because they learned how to survive without constant validation. They learned how to keep going without applause. They learned how to trust their path even when nobody understood it. This strength becomes one of their greatest gifts. It allows them to continue growing even when growth creates temporary distance. It allows them to remain faithful even when the journey feels lonely. It allows them to believe that better days are still ahead. If you have outgrown people around you, it does not mean you stopped loving them. It simply means your journey is continuing. It means your story is still unfolding. It means your purpose is still calling you forward. The future does not require you to carry guilt for becoming who you were meant to be. The future invites you to embrace the growth that your struggles produced. There is something deeply valuable within you, even if others failed to recognize it. Your story has value even if it did not unfold the way you expected. The seasons that tested you were also preparing you. The seasons that isolated you were also strengthening you. The seasons that confused you were also guiding you. One day, many of the things that feel painful now will make sense in ways you cannot yet imagine. The distance, the growth, the loneliness, and the transformation will reveal themselves as part of a much larger story. A story of resilience, a story of healing, a story of purpose, a story of becoming. If this message spoke to your heart and helped you understand that your growth is not something to apologize for, subscribe to the channel and continue walking alongside others who value faith, healing, purpose, and personal growth. You do not have to carry your journey alone, and there is encouragement waiting for every step ahead. There are seasons in life when the chosen begin to notice something that is both heartbreaking and revealing. The people they once tried so hard to hold on to are no longer walking beside them. The conversations become shorter, the invitations become less frequent. The sense of connection slowly fades. At first, this can feel like rejection. It can feel like abandonment. It can feel as though something precious is being taken away. Yet many times what is actually happening is not rejection at all. It is alignment. It is the gradual separation that occurs when one person continues growing while others remain committed to staying the same. This reality is difficult because the chosen are rarely people who seek distance from others. Most of them have spent years giving their energy, their compassion, their patience, and their support to the people around them. They have listened to countless struggles. They have offered encouragement during difficult seasons. They have stood beside people when nobody else would. Because of this, it can be especially painful when relationships begin to weaken. The chosen often wonder whether they did something wrong. They question themselves, they replay conversations in their minds, they search for explanations. Yet sometimes the answer is much simpler than they realize. Growth changes people. Not only does it change the person who is growing, but it changes every relationship connected to them. A person who once tolerated constant negativity may no longer have the desire to remain in environments filled with it. A person who once accepted disrespect may begin valuing themselves enough to walk away from it. A person who once lived primarily to please others may finally learn how to honor their own needs. These changes are healthy, but they can feel threatening to people who benefited from the old version of that person. The chosen often discover that some relationships were never built upon mutual growth. They were built upon familiarity. They were built upon convenience. They were built upon shared wounds. When healing begins, those foundations become unstable. One of the reasons this process feels so painful is because the chosen tend to see potential in people. They often recognize qualities and possibilities that others overlook. They can see what someone could become if they embraced growth, healing, responsibility, and faith. This gift allows them to encourage others, but it can also create disappointment. They spend years believing in people who refuse to believe in themselves. They invest emotionally in relationships that remain stagnant. They continue hoping for transformation long after evidence suggests otherwise. Eventually, there comes a moment when they realize that potential is not the same as reality. A person may have tremendous potential, but if they refuse to grow, that potential remains unrealized. The chosen cannot carry someone else's future for them. They cannot force maturity. They cannot force healing. They cannot force wisdom. Every person must make those choices independently. Accepting this truth often feels like mourning. It feels like letting go of a future that could have existed but never came to pass. Yet hidden within that grief is freedom. The chosen begin understanding that their responsibility is not to rescue everyone. Their responsibility is to remain faithful to the path they have been given. One of the most significant ways growth changes the chosen is through perspective. Hardship teaches lessons that comfort rarely provides. When you have walked through seasons of deep loss, your understanding of life shifts. When you have faced loneliness that seemed endless, your appreciation for genuine connection deepens. When you have survived disappointments that shattered your expectations, you begin valuing authenticity more than appearances. The chosen often carry this perspective quietly. They do not always talk about it, They do not always announce it, yet it influences everything. It influences how they spend their time. It influences the conversations they enjoy. It influences the relationships they pursue. It influences the goals they prioritize. This growing difference in perspective can make them feel disconnected from people they once related to easily. Topics that once felt important now feel insignificant. Arguments that once seemed urgent now seem unnecessary. Ambitions that once appeared impressive now appear empty. The chosen begin seeking substance instead of surface. They begin seeking meaning instead of image. They begin seeking peace instead of approval. This shift is often misunderstood by those around them. Some people assume they have become distant. Others assume they have become difficult. Some even interpret growth as judgment. Yet in many cases, the chosen are simply becoming more aware of what truly nourishes their spirit. They are becoming less willing to invest their energy in things that leave them feeling drained, discouraged, or disconnected from their purpose. Another reason the chosen outgrow people around them is because suffering often accelerates maturity. While others may spend years avoiding difficult truths, the chosen are frequently forced to confront them directly. They learn about disappointment earlier. They learn about loss earlier. They learn about endurance earlier. These experiences create emotional depth. They create wisdom. They create resilience. The result is that the chosen often find themselves operating from a different level of understanding than many of the people around them. This does not make them better. It simply means they have been shaped differently. A tree that survives powerful storms develops roots that look different from a tree that never faced strong winds. The chosen often develop emotional and spiritual roots that run deeper because of what they have endured. This depth influences every area of life. It influences how they respond to challenges. It influences how they handle setbacks. It influences how they view success. Most importantly, it influences how they view themselves. One of the greatest transformations that occurs within the chosen is the gradual realization that their worth is not determined by how many people understand them. This lesson rarely comes easily. For years, many chosen individuals search for validation. They hope others will finally recognize their value. They hope someone will acknowledge their sacrifices. They hope someone will understand their intentions. Yet life repeatedly teaches them that recognition is unreliable. Some people will appreciate them, others will not. Some will understand them, others never will. Some will celebrate their growth, others will feel threatened by it. Eventually, the chosen learn to anchor their identity somewhere deeper. They stop measuring their value by external approval. They stop allowing rejection to define them. They stop allowing misunderstanding to diminish their confidence. This inner stability becomes one of the reasons they continue outgrowing old environments. Once you know your worth, it becomes difficult to remain in places that consistently make you question it. Once you understand your value, it becomes difficult to tolerate relationships built upon manipulation, disrespect, or constant criticism. Once you begin seeing yourself through healthier eyes, you naturally seek healthier surroundings. This process can feel lonely because growth often occurs before new connections arrive. There is usually a period between what was and what will be. A period where familiar relationships have faded, but new relationships have not yet appeared. This space can feel empty. It can feel uncertain. It can feel like wandering through unfamiliar territory. Yet many of the most important transformations occur during this season. It is here that the chosen learn how to trust God without constant reassurance. It is here that they learn how to appreciate their own company. It is here that they discover strengths they never knew they possessed. It is here that they develop confidence rooted in character rather than popularity. God often does some of his deepest work in the quiet places. He often shapes people when there are no crowds watching. He often prepares hearts during seasons that seem unremarkable from the outside. The chosen may not always understand what is happening in those moments, but later they often realize that those lonely seasons were not empty. They were sacred. They were preparing them for future responsibilities, future relationships, and future opportunities. If you find yourself outgrowing people around you, remember that growth is not betrayal. It is not selfishness. It is not evidence that you have become cold or uncaring. Growth is often evidence that you have learned from what life has taught you. It is evidence that pain did not destroy you. It is evidence that your struggles produced wisdom. It is evidence that your experiences developed strength within you. You carried burdens that few people ever noticed. You survived battles that nobody applauded. You continued moving forward even when discouragement surrounded you. There is a strength within you that kept moving forward even on your darkest days. That strength matters. That endurance matters. That faith matters. Your kindness matters. Your patience matters. Your perseverance matters. The people who failed to recognize your value do not determine your value. The people who misunderstood your heart do not define your heart. The people who walked away do not control your future. Your story remains valuable. Your journey remains meaningful. God has not forgotten you. He sees every step. He sees every sacrifice. He sees every moment when you chose integrity over convenience. He sees every time you continued believing when giving up would have been easier. Those moments are part of who you are becoming. One day you may look back and realize that many of the relationships you mourned were never meant to accompany you into the next chapter of your life. You may realize that the separation created room for growth that could not have happened otherwise. You may realize that what felt like loss was often preparation. What felt like loneliness was often refinement. What felt like being left behind was actually being led forward. If these words brought comfort to your heart and reminded you that your growth has purpose, subscribe to the channel and continue receiving encouragement rooted in faith, resilience, healing, and hope. Sometimes the right message arrives exactly when it is needed, and your journey toward deeper purpose and peace is still unfolding. Perhaps one of the greatest misunderstandings about being chosen is the belief that growth should always feel rewarding while it is happening. In reality, some of the most important growth feels painful long before it feels purposeful. It feels like loss before it feels like freedom. It feels like confusion before it feels like clarity. It feels like separation before it feels like alignment. This is why so many chosen people spend years wondering why they seem to outgrow everyone around them. They do not see themselves as extraordinary. They do not wake up believing they are better than others. In many cases, they are among the most humble people in the room. They simply keep learning. They keep evolving. They keep allowing life's experiences to shape them. While others may avoid difficult lessons, the chosen often face them directly. As a result, they continue changing while many people around them remain exactly where they were years before. This creates a tension that can be difficult to explain. You may love people deeply while simultaneously realizing that you can no longer walk the same path together. You may appreciate the role someone played in your life while recognizing that the season you shared has ended. You may carry gratitude for a relationship while understanding that continuing it in the same way would require shrinking yourself. Many chosen people spend years trying to avoid this reality. They lower their standards to preserve relationships. They silence their dreams to avoid making others uncomfortable. They hide their growth to maintain acceptance. They pretend to be less aware, less ambitious, less healed, or less transformed than they truly are. Yet eventually this becomes exhausting. There comes a point when authenticity becomes more important than approval. There comes a point when pretending feels heavier than being misunderstood. There comes a point when the chosen finally realize that becoming who they were meant to be is not something they should apologize for. One of the reasons God allows this process is because purpose often requires preparation. The person you are becoming may need qualities that could never develop if you remain surrounded only by comfort and familiarity. Strength is developed through resistance. Wisdom is developed through experience. Discernment is developed through mistakes and lessons. Resilience is developed through adversity. The chosen often carry these qualities because life demanded them. They did not volunteer for every challenge. They did not ask for every disappointment. They did not seek every lonely season. Yet they endured them. They kept moving forward. They kept believing. They kept growing. The result is that they become different. Not different in a way that makes them superior, but different in a way that makes them prepared. There are conversations they can now have because of what they survived. There is compassion they can now offer because of what they endured. There is wisdom they can now share because of what they learned. There is strength they now possess because they refused to quit. The chosen often underestimate how much they have changed because growth happens gradually, day by day, lesson by lesson, disappointment by disappointment. They evolve. Then one day they look back and realize they are no longer the same person. The fears that once controlled them have lost much of their power. The opinions that once devastated them no longer carry the same weight. The obstacles that once seemed impossible no longer appear insurmountable. They have become stronger without even realizing it. They have become wiser without seeking recognition. They have become more resilient through simple persistence. This transformation is valuable because it creates a foundation that circumstances cannot easily destroy. External success may come and go. Recognition may come and go. Relationships may come and go. But character remains, integrity remains, wisdom remains, faith remains. The chosen often discover that these inner qualities become some of their greatest treasures. They learn that true confidence is not loud. It does not demand attention. It does not require constant validation. It comes from knowing who you are and understanding what you have survived. There is something powerful about a person who has endured hardship without becoming bitter. There is something remarkable about a person who has experienced rejection without losing their capacity to love. There is something inspiring about a person who has suffered disappointment without abandoning hope. Many chosen people embody these qualities even when they do not realize it. They continue showing kindness after being hurt. They continue offering grace after being misunderstood. They continue believing in better days after enduring difficult seasons. This quiet perseverance is one of the reasons they eventually outgrow certain relationships and environments. Growth changes what you can tolerate. It changes what you pursue. It changes what you believe is possible. The chosen begin understanding that protecting their peace is not selfish. Maintaining healthy boundaries is not selfish. Honoring their calling is not selfish. They learn that constantly sacrificing their well-being to keep others comfortable is not love. It is self-neglect. Real love includes honesty. Real love includes growth. Real love includes respect. Sometimes the most loving thing a person can do is continue moving forward even when others choose not to join them. This lesson can feel painful because the chosen often carry enormous loyalty. They remember the people who helped them. They remember shared memories. They remember the good times. Yet loyalty should never require abandoning the future God is calling you toward. There are moments when faith requires movement. There are moments when purpose requires courage. There are moments when growth requires letting go. Not because you hate what is behind you, but because you honor what is ahead of you. If you have spent years feeling different, isolated, or misunderstood because of your growth, know that you are not alone. Many people walking a path of purpose experience the same struggle. They often feel as though they exist between worlds. They no longer fit comfortably into old environments, yet they have not fully arrived at the new chapter waiting for them. This transition can feel uncertain, but it is also evidence that change is occurring. The old season is ending. The new season is approaching. The chosen often focus so much on what they have lost that they overlook what they have gained. They focus on relationships that faded while forgetting the wisdom they acquired. They focus on people who left while overlooking the strength that remained. They focus on missed opportunities while forgetting the resilience developed through perseverance. Yet when they pause and honestly reflect, they begin seeing the truth. They are stronger than they used to be. They are wiser than they used to be. They are more self-aware than they used to be. They are more resilient than they used to be. They are more capable of handling life's challenges than they used to be. Not every battle you fought was in vain. Not every tear was wasted. Not every disappointment was meaningless. The seasons that tested you were also shaping who you were becoming. The setbacks taught lessons that success never could. The delays developed patience. The loneliness developed depth. The struggles developed endurance. The uncertainty developed faith. Even now, there may be blessings taking shape that you cannot yet see. There may be relationships being prepared that align with the person you have become. There may be opportunities approaching that require the strength you developed during difficult seasons. There may be doors opening that would have overwhelmed the version of you from years ago. God has a way of using every chapter, even the painful ones. He uses the waiting. He uses the disappointment. He uses the heartbreak. He uses the uncertainty. Nothing is wasted when placed in His hands. Your story is not defined by who failed to understand you. It is not defined by who walked away. It is not defined by who overlooked your value. Your story is defined by your willingness to keep moving forward. It is defined by your courage to continue growing. It is defined by your refusal to surrender hope. You are worth far more than the moments that tried to make you feel small. You are worth far more than the rejection you experienced. You are worth far more than the limitations others placed upon you. The fact that you are still standing says more about your strength than you realize. God saw the tears that nobody else noticed. He saw the nights when you felt alone. He saw the battles you fought in silence. He saw the moments when your heart was tired but you kept going anyway. He has not forgotten you. He has not overlooked your faithfulness. He has not ignored your perseverance. Your journey still matters. Your growth still matters. Your purpose still matters. One day, the things that currently feel confusing may reveal a meaning that is difficult to see right now. One day, you may understand why certain people could not continue with you. One day, you may see how every lesson, every struggle, every delay, and every separation contributed to your becoming. Until then, continue honoring the growth that life has produced within you. Continue trusting the strength that has carried you this far. Continue believing that your story still holds beauty, purpose, and hope. If this message encouraged your heart and reminded you that your growth is part of a greater journey, subscribe to the channel and remain connected to messages that strengthen faith, inspire healing, and encourage perseverance. There is a place for people who are still growing, still believing, and still discovering the purpose hidden within their story.